The Christmas dinner table was my mother's pride and joy. Red tablecloth, silver candlesticks, crystal plates arranged with golden roasted turkey. From the doorway, it looked like something out of a magazine spread, the perfect family Christmas. Then she hit her. Crack. The sound was sharp and clean, like a dry branch snapping in half. Amy's head jerked to the side, and a red mark bloomed slowly across her left cheek. She didn't cry out, just a quiet intake of breath, barely audible over the hum of conversation. Lily sat beside her, still clutching a carrot stick in her small hand. My 6-year-old daughter's mouth hung open, her blue eyes wide and fixed on the scene unfolding in front of her. She looked frozen, like someone had pressed pause on her little body. My mother's hand was still in the air, fingers splayed wide. She was trembling, but her expression wasn't one of regret. It was triumph, the look of someone who had finally done what they'd been wanting to do for years. You. Catherine pointed at Amy, her voice climbing to a shrill pitch that cut through the room like a blade. You think you're something in this house? You're nothing. You stole my son, you stole my home, and you can't even put together a decent Christmas dinner. Mom. I stood up. The legs of my chair scraped against the hardwood floor, a sound so jarring that everyone at the table turned to look at me. The turkey platter wobbled. A spoon clattered against a plate. Catherine stopped mid-sentence. She wasn't used to me interrupting. She wasn't used to me standing up at all. I walked around the table to where Amy sat. She was staring down at her lap, her hands folded neatly on her thighs, her knuckles white. Her eyelashes were wet, but the tears hadn't fallen. She had been holding them back for 7 years, and she wasn't about to let them go now. Lily. My daughter slid off her chair without a word and ran to me, wrapping her arms around my leg. Her face pressed into my trousers, her small shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I could feel the vibration of her crying through my leg. I took Amy's coat from the back of her chair and handed it to her. Put this on. She took it. Her fingers brushed mine, cold and trembling, but her movements were steady. She stood up, shrugged the coat over her shoulders, and bent down to lift Lily into her arms. My daughter locked her arms around her mother's neck and buried her face in Amy's shoulder, away from everyone else at that table. I reached for my car keys on the sideboard. Jack Morrison. My mother's voice chased me across the room. If you walk out that door tonight, don't you ever come back. You hear me? You're dead to me. Dead. I didn't turn around. I pulled the front door open, and the December wind hit me like a wall of ice. It swept through the hallway, rattling the Christmas tree lights and nearly extinguishing the candles on the table. A glass tipped over and shattered on the floor. My sister Beth stood up from her chair. Jack, wait, just calm down, okay? Let's all just. But I heard her sit back down. She always did that, said just enough to look like she was trying, then stopped before it cost her anything. Beth. Catherine redirected her fury. Say something. Tell him to come back. Mom. Beth's voice was barely a whisper. Just let them go. I pulled the door shut behind me. The lock clicked into place, and the sound of Catherine throwing something against the wall was muffled by the heavy wood. Snow hit my face, sharp and cold. Chicago in December didn't mess around. I got Amy and Lily into the back seat of the car, then slid behind the wheel. The engine turned over, and I scraped the frost off the windshield with the edge of my hand. Through the fog glass, I could see the dim orange glow of the streetlights. Amy didn't say anything. She just held Lily in the back seat, one hand stroking our daughter's hair, the other pressed flat against her own reddened cheek. We were 3 blocks away before she spoke. Her voice was soft, almost lost beneath the hum of the heater. Jack. I glanced in the rearview mirror. You finally did it. Her voice caught slightly, but she held it together. You finally stood up. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. 7 years of cowardice, and she'd summed it up in 6 words. A lot of people thought what happened that night came out of nowhere. It didn't. That was 7 years of pressure, 7 years of swallowing my own voice, 7 years of watching the woman I loved shrink a little more every time we walked through my mother's front door. The slap was just the last domino. The first time I brought Amy home to meet my mother, Catherine had looked her up and down and said, "Oh, you're shorter than you looked in the pictures." Amy had laughed it off. On the drive home, she asked me, "Does your mom not like me?" I told her the same thing I told her every time after that. She's like that with everyone. Don't take it personally. I said that for 7 years. When we got married, Catherine refused to come to the wedding. She said she had bad knees, and the venue was a 40-minute drive. The real reason was that she didn't want to watch her son marry someone she hadn't chosen. Amy put on her wedding dress and cried in the bridal suite. The makeup artist had to fix her face 3 times before she walked down the aisle. The spot in the front row where my mother should have sat stayed empty all day. When Lily was born, Catherine insisted on helping with the newborn. She showed up, did nothing except criticize, and made Amy's life a living hell for 2 straight weeks. The baby wasn't gaining weight fast enough. Amy's milk wasn't good enough. The nursery wasn't clean enough. Nothing was ever enough. One night, Amy was so exhausted she asked Catherine to change one diaper. Just one. Catherine threw the diaper on the floor and said, "I raised 2 children without ever asking for help. What's wrong with you?" I heard Amy crying in the bathroom that night. I knocked on the door. She said she was fine. I walked away. I told myself I was keeping the peace. I was just smoothing things over, holding the family together. What I was really doing was putting the entire weight of my mother's cruelty onto Amy's shoulders and pretending I didn't notice. My father died young. Catherine raised Beth and me alone, so I let her get away with everything. She said my wife wasn't good enough. I let it go. She insulted my wife in front of other people. I let it go. She made my wife feel like an intruder in her own family. I let it go. I had all the excuses ready. She's my mom. She's old. She's not going to change. Family is everything. Just keep your head down and it'll pass. But it never passed. It just got worse. Because every time I didn't stand up, I was telling my mother she could go further. I was giving her permission to take the next step. Amy carried all of it. She never complained. She never put me in the middle. When my mother insulted her, she'd go into the bathroom and cry quietly, then come out with a smile on her face and say everything was fine. That night at the dinner table, when my mother's hand connected with Amy's cheek, a thought exploded in my head with the force of a bomb. If I'd said something the very first time, if I'd looked my mother in the eye when she called Amy short and said, "That's not your concern," everything that came after would have been different. It was me. I made this monster. I fed it with my silence, watered it with my excuses, and let it grow until it was big enough to hit my wife in front of my daughter. That slap landed on Amy's face, but the blame belonged to me. That night, after I'd gotten Lily down and Amy had retreated to the bedroom, I sat in the living room staring at a blank television screen. My phone buzzed constantly on the coffee table. Catherine called 14 times. I ignored every one. Beth called 6 times. I let the last one go to voicemail, then played it back with the phone pressed to my ear. Beth's voice was hushed, like she was hiding in a closet somewhere. "Jack, Mom broke the antique vase in the living room. She's hysterical. She says if you don't come back and apologize, she's cutting you off for good. Just give in, okay? It's Christmas. She's old. You can't do this to her. Please." I deleted the message. Give in. She's old. It's Christmas. Don't make a scene. I'd heard those words for 7 years. Every single time I'd caved. Every single time I'd come back with Amy and made her swallow her pride so my mother could feel like she'd won. I'd postponed our anniversary, rescheduled Lily's birthday parties, even left Amy alone in the hospital while her father was dying, because my mother had called and said she had a cold and needed me to take her to the emergency room. I'd actually done it. I'd left my wife in the hospital with her dying father for 2 days. Amy never said a word about it, but I remembered. I remembered everything. At 2 in the morning, I went to my study and opened my laptop. I have a habit from my engineering days. I keep everything. Bank statements, credit card records, receipts for repairs, insurance bills. Anything related to money, I'd filed away for 7 years. I'd never had a reason for it. Maybe I knew, somewhere deep down, that I'd need it one day. I opened a spreadsheet. 3 columns. Date, item, amount. I started typing. January 2017, monthly living expenses, $1,800. February 2017, same, $1,800. March 2017, water damage repair at mom's house, $2,800. June 2017, backyard fence replacement, $3,200. September 2017, Yellowstone tour package, $1,400. December 2017, gold necklace for Christmas, $950. February 2018, heating unit replacement, $3,600. May 2018, roof replacement, $6,200. I typed until my fingers were stiff and my eyes burned. By 4 in the morning, I had 7 years of payments laid out in black and white. Routine transfers, $151,200. One-time expenses, $118,400. Total, $269,600. Almost $270,000. And on top of that, the house, my father's house, the one I'd inherited. She'd lived there for 20 years without paying a penny in rent. At market rates, that was another $80,000 over 7 years. She'd spent all of that, spent it down to nothing. And then she'd hired a lawyer to take my house while my wife still had a handprint on her face. I saved the file, encrypted it, and backed it up to the cloud. I didn't hear Amy come down the stairs. She appeared in the doorway of my study, a glass of water in her hand, leaning against the frame. She'd been crying again. I could tell from the redness around her eyes, but she'd already wiped the tears away. "You're still up," she said. "Couldn't sleep." She didn't ask what I'd been working on. She just said, "Jack, your mother will call in the morning." "I know. Will you answer?" I looked at her. Her face was calm. Not defeated, calm. That was worse. That was a person who'd been exhausted for so long that exhaustion had become her normal state. "I'll answer," I said. "But I'm not going to be the same person who answered before." She nodded once, turned, and went back upstairs. I heard her footsteps cross the hall, the soft click of the bedroom door. I sat in my study, not moving, staring at the snow piling up against the window. Chicago winter was brutal, but for the first time in 7 years, something inside me felt warm. At 6:40 the next morning, the phone rang. I picked it up on the first ring. My hand didn't shake. Neither did my voice. "Jack." She'd been crying all night. Her voice was raw, scraped clean of its usual sharp edge. "Please come home. Please. I haven't slept at all. I can't do this alone. Please just." "Mom." I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, watching the gray-blue light of dawn seep through the window. Lily was still asleep. Amy was still in bed. I was alone in that kitchen. "You hit Amy." "Because I didn't mean to. She just made me so. Whatever she said, whatever she did, it doesn't matter. You hit her. You hit her in front of your granddaughter. That's wrong. There is no excuse for that." She went quiet. For a long time, the only sound was her breathing, ragged and wet. Then the tears came back with a vengeance. "You don't understand. You don't know what it's like. I'm your mother. I raised you alone. And you're choosing her over me? After everything I've done for you. Amy is my wife." I said it slowly, each word measured. "She is not an outsider. She is my family. She is the mother of my child. And for 7 years, you've treated her like she doesn't matter. She never complained. She never said a bad word about you to me. She took everything you threw at her, and she still showed up at your table every Christmas. If you think she's the enemy, then the problem isn't her. It's you." She was stunned into silence. I could hear her trying to form a response, her breath catching in her throat. She wasn't used to me talking back. She wasn't used to being challenged. "Mom," I said, "you called me. Why did you call me? Because you were worried about me? Or because you were worried about the money?" The sharp intake of breath told me everything. "Are you calling me because you're afraid I'll stop supporting you?" She sputtered. That's not." "Then tell me." I said. "Tell me you hit my wife because you were angry. Tell me you're sorry, and I'll keep sending the checks. But if you can't say those 3 words, then from now on, you get exactly what the law requires, $500 a month. Nothing more. Jack Morrison." "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up. My hand was shaking slightly, but my heart was steady. I set the phone on the table and took a long drink of my coffee. It had gone cold. Upstairs, I heard Lily's footsteps, the pitter-patter of small feet across the bedroom floor, the creak of the bed as she jumped on Amy. The sound of her laugh drifted down the stairs. The sun had come up. The snow was still falling, but the sky had gotten lighter. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Beth standing on the porch, alone, holding a paper bag. No husband. No kids. Just her, bundled in a white coat, with that practiced smile she always wore when she was about to play peacemaker. I opened the door. "Jack," she said, slipping past me into the hallway before I could stop her. "I brought you Mom's dumplings. Pork and chive. Your favorite. She got up at 5 to make them. I didn't take the bag. I left it sitting on the entry table." "Beth, what are you doing here?" She pulled off her coat and made herself at home in the living room, settling onto the couch like she'd been invited. "I came to check on you. Mom told me about last night. She's devastated, Jack. She knows she went too far." "Beth." I stood in front of her, arms crossed. "You came to defend her. I came to help you both. She's your mother. You can't just—" One slap, Beth. Not one word, not one argument. One slap. "You were there. You saw it." Her composure cracked for just a second. It was a moment of anger. And Amy wasn't even hurt that badly. Amy's face was swollen until the next morning. "And you're telling me she wasn't hurt?" Beth stood up now, her voice losing its careful calm. "What do you want from her, Jack? Do you want her on her knees? She's 70 years old. You can't make her. I want her to say 3 words. 'I'm sorry.' That's all. If she can't say that, she doesn't see Lily ever again." Beth's eyes went wide. "You'd keep Lily from her grandmother?" Her grandmother slapped her mother in front of her. "What do you think I should do? Pretend it didn't happen?" "Jack, I'm being what, Beth? Rational? For the first time in my life." I stepped closer. "You came here to fight for Mom. But you know she was wrong, don't you? You keep saying she's old, she's emotional, she's having a hard time. But you won't say she was right. Because you can't. Because she wasn't. You know it. Everyone at that table knows it." Beth's mouth opened and closed. For once, she had nothing to say. She grabbed her coat and stormed to the front door. "You'll regret this, Jack," she said, her voice shaking. The door slammed behind her. I stood in the living room, listening to her car start up and pull away. She hadn't even touched the glass of water Amy had left out for her. She hadn't asked how Amy was doing. She hadn't asked if Lily was okay. All she'd brought was Mom-made dumplings. 7 years. Not once had she ever asked about Amy. To Beth, Amy was just the woman who stole her brother. A problem to be managed, a body to be tolerated. I didn't need her anymore. 3 days after Christmas, I went back to work. Mark Lee walked into my office carrying his coffee, leaned against the doorframe, and took one look at my face. "Rough Christmas." My mother slapped my wife. I walked out. He nearly choked on his coffee. "You're serious? Does it look like I'm joking?" He set down his mug, shut the door, and sat down across from me. "Okay, tell me the whole thing." I told him. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "So what are you doing about it?" "I cut off the extra money. Until she apologizes. If she doesn't, she gets the legal minimum and nothing else." Mark leaned back. "Good. My grandmother was the same way. My dad put up with it for 20 years. Then one day he told her the free ride was over. She didn't speak to him for 6 months. But after that, she treated my mom like a human being. Sometimes people like that need to understand you're not their punching bag before they change. What if she doesn't change? Then you keep walking," Mark said, "and you don't look back." "But listen, did she hire a lawyer?" 3 days. "I doubt it." He shook his head. "My dad made that mistake. She sued him for elder neglect, and the court doubled his support payments. You need to document everything. Every penny you've ever given her. Every payment, every repair, every gift." "I've got it," I said. 7 years of records. Mark pointed at me. "Then you hold on to that like it's gold." That afternoon, the lawyer's letter arrived. The envelope was delivered to my office. Heavy cream paper, embossed with the name Blackwood and Associates in gold lettering. I opened it in silence. The letter was long, dense, and dripping with legal formality. The gist was simple. Catherine Morrison claimed a substantial interest in the house she'd lived in for 2 decades, and if I didn't settle out of court, she would sue for partial ownership. I read it 3 times, and then I laughed. Mark poked his head through the door. "What? She's suing me for the house." His jaw dropped. "You cut her off 3 days ago, and she already has lawyers?" "Not 3 days." I set the letter down. She had this ready before Christmas. She was planning it all along. It hit me like a freight train. The slap wasn't an accident. It wasn't a moment of rage. It was part of a plan. Provoke me, get me to retaliate, and use it as grounds to sue for abandonment. If I stayed quiet, she kept bleeding me dry. If I fought back, she'd take everything. She couldn't lose. Except she didn't know about the spreadsheet. She didn't know about the 7 years of records. She didn't know that while she'd been planning to destroy me, I'd been quietly building a fortress. I sat at my desk, running my thumb along the edge of the letter. The anger didn't rise to my chest. It settled deeper, right into my bones. Turned into something cold and unbreakable. That night, I made a phone call. A friend referred me to Daniel Wong, a real estate attorney with a small office in the Loop. I checked his record before I called. He'd won several cases like this, where family members tried to strong-arm their way into ownership. Amy came with me. She sat beside me the whole time, her hand clasped over mine, silent but present. Daniel was in his 40s, Asian American, with wire-rimmed glasses and a desk buried under more paperwork than I'd ever seen. He spent 10 minutes reviewing my materials, then leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. Blackwood and Associates, he said. They're bulldogs. They specialize in elder rights, and their whole strategy is intimidation. They're betting you'd rather settle than sue your own mother in open court. He tapped the folder. But you've got a hell of a case. If she pushes? He took off his glasses and polished them on his tie. Your father's will is clear. The house is yours. She's lived there for 2 decades, but every repair, every upgrade, every major expense came out of your pocket. Her claim of maintenance contributions is laughable. And you, he slid a sheet of paper across the desk, you've been supporting her for 7 years. Total, $270 cash, plus about $80 in foregone rent. $350, Daniel said. If she takes you to court, the judge is going to look at those numbers and see a woman who was well provided for, and a son who went above and beyond. She doesn't have a leg to stand on. And if she backs down, then you still win. You've got the dismissal on record. She'll never be able to use this against you again. Amy squeezed my hand. I turned to look at her. She gave me the smallest smile. One more thing, Daniel said. When she hit your wife, were there witnesses? My sister, my brother-in-law, my daughter. Can your sister testify? I didn't answer. Daniel studied my face, nodded slowly, and let it drop. Here's my advice. From now on, every communication with your mother, text, email, phone call, record it. Illinois is a one-party consent state. You're allowed to do that without telling her. If she's dumb enough to say something damning, you've got it forever. I stood up and shook his hand. When we walked out onto the street, Chicago wind hit us hard. Amy pulled her coat tighter and looked at me. Jack, are you really going to fight your mother in court? I don't want to, I said. But if that's what she chooses, I'm not backing down anymore. She was quiet for a moment. Then she slipped her arm through mine. I'm with you, she said. I didn't send a lawyer's letter. I sent something better. A thick manila envelope, packed with pages. The first page was 7-year support record, spreadsheet printout, every line item clear as day, backed up with bank statements. The second section was the property documents, my father's will, the deed with my name on it, the tax records showing I'd paid the bills for 20 years. The third was the rent calculation, market value deductions for 7 years. The fourth was my personal account of Christmas night, what time it happened, what was said, who was present, who moved where. I sent it to Blackwood and Associates, with a copy to my mother's address. Then I called her. She picked up on the first ring. Her voice was cold and brittle. Your lawyer contacted my lawyer. That wasn't my lawyer, I said. That was me. I sent you something. Did you open it? I don't know what you're talking about. Then open it. Read it. And then tell me if you still think you have a case. A long silence on the other end. Then, you think some papers can scare me? I'm not trying to scare you, I said. I'm telling you what I have. 7 years of payments, down to the dollar. Your house, deeded to me. And a record of the night you slapped my wife. Jack, you have 3 choices, Mom. Drop the lawsuit, apologize to Amy in person, and we go back to the old arrangement. Regular payments, regular visits. You keep the house. Or keep fighting, and I countersue for occupancy fraud and take the house back. Or walk away and get the legal minimum forever. You decide. You're threatening your own mother. I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you exactly what's going to happen. I hung up. This time, my hand didn't shake at all. The next day, Blackwood called. A woman's voice, professional and measured. Claire Parker, the attorney assigned to the case. Mr. Morrison, after reviewing the materials you sent, we've determined that our client may have misapprehended certain facts. We recommend a settlement outside of court. What kind of settlement? Essentially, an acknowledgement of your mother's right to reside in the property without. She already has that right. I never asked her to leave. She's the one who sued me. And a formal agreement regarding the continuation of support payments. Legal support payments are already continuing. $500 a month, on time, every month. Anything beyond that isn't support, it's charity. And that charity ends until she apologizes. Parker was quiet for a moment. I'll relay your position. 3 days later, Blackwood dismissed the case. I had Daniel confirm the dismissal in writing before I signed anything. I'd won the first round. Late February, Beth showed up at my door unannounced. No phone call, no warning. Just her husband Mark, and their 2 kids standing on the porch like they'd been in the neighborhood. Amy opened the door. Beth pushed past her before anyone could speak. Amy, we were just in the area. Thought we'd swing by. Her husband Mark followed, carrying a fruit basket and wearing his usual grin. The kids ran straight for Lily. I came out of my study. Beth was already on the couch, sipping tea that Amy had brought her, her legs crossed like she owned the place. Jack, she smiled wide. Long time. I leaned against the doorframe. Beth, what do you want? Can't I just visit my brother? She laughed, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Hey, I heard you cut Mom's money off. Is that true? I stopped the extra payments. The legal minimum is still going through. Oh, Jack. She sighed heavily. Mom's been struggling, you know. Last month, I had to cover her heating bill. How much was it? She blinked. I don't know. 300? I'll pay you back. No, that's not what I'm here for. Then what are you here for? She put her cup down and leaned forward, her voice dropping into something that was supposed to sound reasonable. She's your mother, Jack. You can't just. She apologizes, she gets the money back. That's all I ask. The smile finally cracked. You can't make her get on her knees just because she lost her temper. She didn't lose her temper, Beth. She hit my wife. In front of my daughter. And she's never said sorry. Not once. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Her husband, Mark, chimed in from the armchair. Come on, Jack. Family stuff, you work it out. You don't cut people off. I looked at him. Mark, if someone hit your daughter in front of your grandkids, would you just let it slide? He shut his mouth. Beth stood up, tea sloshing over the rim of the cup. Okay, fine. You've made your point. But who do you think is paying the property tax, the insurance, the maintenance on Mom's house now that you've stopped? Me, Jack. Every month, I'm bleeding money to keep her afloat. I can't afford this. Then stop, I said. That's the option. If you can't afford it, don't pay it. But you came here to pressure me into doing it. You're not asking me to help Mom. You're asking me to fix a problem that you can't handle on your own. And instead of saying that, you're wrapping it in family guilt. She was speechless. Her husband stood up and touched her arm. Come on, Beth. Let's go. She shook him off and glared at me. You've changed, Jack. You used to care about this family. I used to think caring meant getting walked on, I said. Now I know better. They left. The door banged behind them, and the sound of their car fading down the street was the best thing I'd heard all week. Amy came out of the kitchen. She'd heard everything. She won't be back? I said. Probably not. Are you okay? She thought about it. I think I'm fine. Actually, more than fine. I feel light. That word stayed with me for a long time. In March, my Aunt Susan called. She said she was in town visiting friends and asked if I'd meet her for dinner. I knew she wasn't visiting friends. She chose a Chinese restaurant, ordered enough food for 4 people, and poured me tea before I even sat down. Jack, you look thin. Are you eating? Work's been busy. She talked about the weather, her grandkids, Uncle Tom's new car, and then, right around the time we were finishing the spring rolls, she steered into the real conversation. Jack, your mother's been calling me, crying. She says you've cut her off completely. I haven't cut her off. I send her the legal minimum every month. She's just used to getting 3 times that. So why not just? Because she hit Amy. She hit my wife. And she never apologized. Susan put down her chopsticks. Jack, you know your mother. She's proud. She'd rather die than say she's sorry. Then she can live on $500 a month. Susan sighed. She's old, Jack. She's not going to be around forever. You want to spend the last years of her life fighting. I set my own chopsticks down and looked at my aunt across the table. Susan, when she hit Amy, did she stop to think about how much time she had left? When she hired a lawyer to take my house, was she thinking about family? She spent almost $300,000 of my money, and then she tried to take the house I inherited from my father. What exactly did she do to deserve a pass? Susan opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I pulled up the spreadsheet on my phone and slid it across the table. This is what she's cost me in 7 years. Look at it. She looked. Her eyes went wide. She spent all of it, I said. And then she tried to take my house. Tell me honestly, Susan, would you forgive that? She was silent for a long time. Then she reached across the table and patted my hand. You've been carrying a lot, Jack, she said. And nobody saw it. She didn't ask me to forgive my mother after that. When we left the restaurant, she gave me a hug on the sidewalk. I'll talk to her, but I won't ask you to do anything you don't want to do. I hugged her back. April. I'd kept Lily away from Catherine for months. She'd asked a few times, when are we going to Grandma's? And I'd always said Grandma was busy. She was young enough to forget. Then one night, while I was bathing her, she looked up at me with her mother's blue eyes and asked, Daddy? Did Grandma hit Mommy because Mommy did something bad? The washcloth stopped in my hand. I crouched down to her level, water dripping off my elbows. Lily, Grandma hit Mommy because Grandma did something wrong. Mommy didn't do anything wrong. She thought about that. Then why did Grandma hit her? Because Grandma has a bad temper. But having a bad temper doesn't make it okay to hit people. You remember that. If anyone ever hits you, you come tell me right away. She nodded solemnly. Then she asked the question that has haunted me ever since. Daddy, why didn't you stop her before? The washcloth slipped into the water. I felt my throat close up. Lily reached up with her tiny wet hand and patted my face. Don't cry, Daddy. I wasn't crying. Not exactly. But something was spilling over inside me that I couldn't stop. I wrapped her in a towel and held her close. I said. I should have stopped her years ago. I'm sorry, Lily. I'm so sorry. She wrapped her arms around my neck, her damp hair pressing against my face. That night, I lay awake for hours. Amy was asleep beside me, her breathing slow and even. But my mind kept circling back to that question. Why didn't you stop her before? I didn't have an answer that satisfied me, but I had a promise to myself. From tonight on, I would never let it happen again. Mark Lee invited me for a drink in early April. We sat in a quiet bar in Lincoln Park, a couple of beers between us. Your brother-in-law? Mark said. Mark Robertson, right? The real estate agent. Yeah. Mark pulled out his phone and scrolled for a minute. There's a thread on a local property forum. Someone's been reporting him for a while. He handed me the phone. The headline read, asterisk, warning, Agent Mark R. accused of forged signatures. Asterisk. I scrolled through. Allegations of fake authorizations, unauthorized listings, complaints that had gone nowhere because someone with influence had buried them. Someone with influence. That meant me. Beth had been implying for years that I had pull at the city level. And because people knew my reputation, they gave her husband a free pass. I handed the phone back. Do you know anything else about this? Just that he's been skating on thin ice for a while. Someone finally decided to push. That night, I looked into it myself. I called a contact at the Department of Buildings and asked about Mark Robertson's license. Can you check if there are any open complaints? Or any investigations? I'll check Monday, he said. I didn't tell Amy. I didn't tell anyone. Some cards should be played close to the chest. That card came due a few weeks later. 10:30 at night. The doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Beth on my porch, alone, no makeup, eyes swollen. She'd been crying for hours. Jack, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I need your help. I didn't let her in. I stood in the doorway, the cold night air flowing past her into the house. It's Mark, she said. The city's investigating him. They might pull his license. You know people there, Jack. You could make this go away. Please. Beth. I looked at her. I'm the one who reported him. Her face collapsed. What? I asked a contact to look into him. He found 4 outstanding complaints in 3 years. Forgery, fraud, misuse of client funds. All buried because of me, because people gave him a pass as a favor to your brother. I'm done giving out favors. Beth's face twisted. How could you? He's my husband. He's the father of your nieces. He's He's been forging signatures and stealing from clients, I said. He did it to himself. And you? Beth, you never once asked me about Amy. Not once. You never asked how she was doing after Mom slapped her. You never apologized. You never even acknowledged that it happened. But now that Mark's in trouble, suddenly you remember you've got a brother? Her tears came in earnest now. Thick, ugly, desperate sobs. Jack, please. If he loses his license, everything falls apart. The kids, I can't, please. Then get a job. You've got a degree. You've got options. You just never wanted to use them while it was easier to rely on me. This isn't fair. I met her eyes. Beth, if you needed $2,000 to pay the bills, I'd give it to you. I'd bring it over tonight and not ask a single question. But what you're asking me to do is use my influence to protect someone who committed crimes. I won't do it. Not for anyone. I closed the door. Through the wood, I heard her crying. Then her footsteps retreating down the path. Her car starting, the sound of tires rolling away into the night. Amy came downstairs in her robe. Beth. Yeah. Mark's license is getting pulled. Because of you? Yes. She looked at me. I braced myself for what she might say. But she didn't say anything about being too hard. She walked over, wrapped her arms around me, and held me for a long moment. Then she went back upstairs. I stood in the hallway, looking at the glass of water Amy had left on the coffee table. I drank it, washed the glass, and put it away. In May, Aunt Susan organized a family get-together at her place in Ohio. A spring reunion, she called it. She called me ahead of time to say that my mother would be there. I'll make sure she keeps the peace. Bring Amy. Bring Lily. I thought about it for a while. Then I said yes. The weather was perfect that day. Susan had set up a long table in the backyard, and family members filled the seats. Cousins, aunts, uncles. Catherine sat at the far end, dressed neatly in a forest green sweater, her hair carefully combed. She looked up when I walked in, then looked away. Beth was there too, without Mark. He was too deep in his investigation to show his face. She sat beside her mother, staring at her phone, refusing to meet my eyes. The meal started quietly. Catherine kept her comments to small talk. Amy sat beside me, serving Lily without fuss, not avoiding her mother-in-law, but not engaging with her either. Then Susan made her move. She raised her glass of wine, cleared her throat, and smiled at the table. So, Catherine, you mentioned you wanted to clear the air with Jack today. We're all here. This is as good a time as any. Catherine's face went rigid. She glared at her sister, but Susan just kept smiling. Every head at the table turned to look at my mother. I watched her hands on the tablecloth, twisting the fabric. Her jaw worked. She looked at me once, then away. Then she spoke. Jack. Her voice was quiet, but everyone heard it. I was wrong. I felt Amy's hand find mine under the table. That night, I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have done what I did. Her face was pale, her lips tight, like every word was being pulled out of her by force. I'm sorry. To you. And to Amy. I'm sorry. Silence. For a long, impossible moment, no one moved. Then Susan clapped her hands together. There. That's how it's done. Now let's eat. The tension broke. People started talking again. The table came back to life. But Beth wasn't smiling. Her face was stone. She hadn't touched her food since the first bite. Then she stood up. Mom, she said, her voice too high, too sharp. Why are you apologizing? You told me Amy was provoking you. You said she insulted you. The table went quiet again. Beth, Susan said, now's not the time. I'm telling the truth. Mom, you said she was giving you attitude. That's what you told me. Beth. Catherine's voice came out strangled. Shut up. No. I'm standing up for you. That's what I've always done. I've always been on your side. Beth was crying now, her face red and blotchy, her composure gone. And now you're caving. You're throwing me under the bus. Catherine tried to speak, but no words came. She looked at her younger daughter, her face pale with shock. I stood up. Everyone looked at me. Beth, I said. You said Amy provoked Mom. Did you hear Amy raise her voice? Did you hear her swear at Mom? Beth opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You can't answer, I said, because it didn't happen. Amy said one sentence that night. Mom, please stop. That's all. You're lying. Beth's face went white. And Beth, I said, how's your husband's license situation? Did he find a good lawyer? She stared at me, her mouth forming words that never came out. I'm not going to save him, I said. I saved him for years, without knowing it. I saved him because people gave him a pass for my sake. That pass is gone now. No one said a word. The only sound was Beth's ragged breathing. Then she fell back into her chair and buried her face in her hands. No one came to comfort her, not even Catherine. I turned to Amy and held out my hand. Let's go. She stood up and lifted Lily into her arms. My daughter looked around at the silent table. She didn't understand what had just happened. She didn't need to. As I walked past Catherine, I paused for a moment. She was staring at her plate, her hands trembling. Mom, you apologized. I'll send the money again. You can stay in the house. But Beth's problems are hers now. I didn't wait for a response. I walked to the door and stepped out into the bright Ohio sun. After that day, things unraveled fast. Mark Robertson's license was officially revoked in June. He was fined, barred from applying again for 3 years, and his name was mud in Chicago real estate. Beth, unable to afford their mortgage alone, started working as a cashier at a supermarket. Within months, her marriage fell apart. Mark moved back to Indiana. I finalized the agreement with my mother in mid-June. She continued living in the house. She'd pay $800 a month in rent, half market rate, and I'd resume sending $1,200 a month in support. Less than before. She didn't argue. That afternoon, she sat at her kitchen table, reading each page of the agreement twice before signing it. Her hands were steady. Jack, she said as she slid the document toward me. If you'd done this years ago, do you think we'd have ended up here? If I'd done this years ago, I said, you'd never have laid a finger on Amy. She didn't answer. When I left that day, she stood in the doorway watching me. I saw her hand lift in the rearview mirror, then fall back to her side. Beth sent me a text in late June. Just one line. I never want to see you again. I replied, okay. Neither of us broke that promise. Aunt Susan called me now and then. Always the same updates. Your mother is staying out of trouble. Beth got the divorce. Uncle Tom says he's on your side. I let her talk. I didn't ask for details. One day, she asked, Jack, do you still hate your mother? I thought about it. I don't hate her. I just don't love her the way I used to. That's fair, Susan said. In mid-August, Catherine called. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. Jack, the air conditioner's broken. The compressor. They want $2,200. I don't have it. Before, I'd have sent the money without a second thought. This time I said, send me the repair company's contact information. I'll take care of it. She hesitated. Okay. I called the repair shop, verified the quote, and paid it directly. Then I texted her the receipt. It's fixed. She replied, thank you. 2 words. She'd never said them before. In September, I took Amy and Lily to see her. Lily ran straight for the backyard slide, and Catherine and I sat in the kitchen with cups of tea. You've lost weight, she said. Busy at work. She nodded, tracing the rim of her mug with her finger. Finally, she said, Jack, why didn't you ever tell me? About the money? About what you were doing for me? I did tell you, but you didn't want to hear it. Every time it came up, you said I was being petty, so I stopped saying anything. She lowered her head. I was afraid. After your father died, I was terrified you'd abandon me. I didn't know how to say that, so I got angry. I pushed everyone away. I know. That agreement you made me sign. She paused. At first I hated you for it. But now I realize, at least I know where I stand. You're not going to walk away and leave me with nothing. You wrote it down. You kept your word. I looked at her. She was older now. White hair, deeper wrinkles, fingers swollen with arthritis. But her eyes were different. Softer. Mom, you're still my mother. I won't abandon you. But the way things were before, that's not coming back. She met my eyes. I know. Through the window, I could see Lily flying down the slide, her laughter sharp and bright. Catherine smiled. She's beautiful, she said. Looks more like Amy every time I see her. Yeah, that's a good thing. I lifted my tea. It was lukewarm, but it tasted better than anything I'd drunk in years. October. A church near Catherine's house held its annual fall fair. She'd gone every year since I could remember, always dragging the whole family along. This year, she didn't call. Aunt Susan mentioned it on the phone. Your mother sat at the fair all afternoon. Had 2 empty seats next to her. She didn't say anything about it. I said, oh. Susan sighed. Jack, she's really getting old. She didn't have trouble hitting people back then. Are you going to hold that against her forever? It doesn't matter whether I hold it against her. What matters is that she knows it mattered. And she does. That's enough. Susan was quiet for a moment. Beth got the divorce finalized. She's living in a small apartment with the kids. Your mother's been helping her. That's her money. She can do what she wants with it. Jack, don't you want to reconcile with Beth? She doesn't want to see me, and I don't have anything to prove to her. She knows where to find me if she ever needs help, but I'm not going to chase her. Susan let out a long breath. All right, Jack, you live your life. Christmas came again. We spent it at home. Amy cooked the turkey. I made the mashed potatoes. Lily destroyed the kitchen. It was perfect. Catherine came the day before, dropped off a gift for Lily, and stayed for about an hour. She said, "Merry Christmas," to Amy on her way out. Amy said it back. No hugs, no tears. But the chill was gone. Lily ripped open her presents in a frenzy. Amy sat on the sofa with a glass of wine, watching her. Jack, she said, this year feels different. Different how? Every other Christmas, I was anxious for a week before. I had to brace myself walking into your mother's house. I had to tell myself over and over not to let her get to me. This year, I didn't even think about it. I reached across and covered her hand. From now on, it'll always be like this. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Lily was on the floor, surrounded by torn wrapping paper, singing along to the Christmas movie on TV. Snow fell outside, piling high against the fence I still hadn't fixed. Next spring, I told myself. New Year's Eve. I was alone in my study, scrolling through old files. The spreadsheet was still there. All the old numbers. The records I'd kept for 7 years. I used to think of them as ammunition. Now they were just history. I moved the file into an archive folder and closed my laptop. A text came in from Catherine. Happy New Year. I'm making dumplings tomorrow. Bring Amy and Lily. I typed back. Okay. Amy called up the stairs. Jack, come down. Count down. I walked out of the study and saw Lily in the living room, spinning in a circle in her glittery party dress, waving a glow stick. Amy was on the sofa, holding out a glass of wine. I came down and took it. 10, 9, 8. Lily was bouncing between us. 7, 6, 5. Amy's hand found mine. 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. Fireworks burst across the television screen. Lily threw her arms around both of us. The three of us stood there, tangled together. Outside, the snow was falling. The fence was still broken. But next spring was coming. And that's not really the end, is it? Because I know some of you are wondering, what about Beth? Did you ever make up? What happened to Mark? Did Catherine ever truly change? Did Amy really let it all go? I'll tell you. Beth found a job at an insurance company. Steady work, 9 to 5. She didn't move back into the neighborhood, but she kept her apartment and raised her kids on her own. On weekends, she'd bring them to Catherine's. Sometimes I'd be there too. We'd speak a little, not much. But she'd pour me tea now, and when she walked me to the door, she'd say, "Drive safe, Jack." Once, she asked me, "Did you ever hate me?" I thought about it. For a while. She didn't ask if I still did. I didn't offer an answer. But we could sit at the same table now. Some things don't need to be spelled out. Mark moved back to Indiana. He found work at a construction site. The real estate license never came back. Uncle Tom retired last summer. Before he moved to Arizona, he came through Chicago and took Amy and me to dinner. He drank a couple of beers, clapped me on the shoulder, and said, "You were too soft before. Now you're hard. That's good. Just don't push your mother away completely. She's old." I said I wouldn't. Catherine's hip recovered. She walked with a slight limp, but she gave up her cane. She joined a senior center and made some friends. One day she called me, excited. "I brought cookies to the center, Jack. Everyone said they were delicious." "Good for you, Mom. I never used to share," she said. "Now I think it's nice to give some away." I didn't know what to say. And Amy? Did she really move past it? I can't answer for her. But one evening in October, she came home from Lily's parent-teacher conference and told me she'd run into another grandmother whose granddaughter was in Lily's class. The woman had asked about her in-laws. "How's your mother-in-law doing?" the woman had asked. Amy had said, "She's fine. She watched Lily for us last weekend." The woman had smiled and said, It's nice you have such good family support. Amy told me this while she was taking off her makeup. I asked her how it felt. She paused, the cotton pad in her hand. You know what? When I said that, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't have to brace myself. I didn't have to force the words out. I just said it, like she was just part of the family, like she'd always been part of the family. She met my eyes in the mirror. It wasn't forgiveness. Not exactly. It was something quieter, something that grows slowly, the way grass grows through cracks in concrete. And the fence. I fixed it in March, all by myself, over a weekend. Ripped out the old rotten wood, put up new boards, painted them white. Lily helped. She handed me brushes and got white paint all over her sleeves. When I was done, Amy came out with 2 glasses of lemonade. Finally, she said. Finally. She handed me a glass and smiled. Next time, don't wait so long. I laughed. Lily ran over and hugged my leg, smearing white paint across my trousers. Dad, she said, next time the fence breaks, I'm going to help you paint it again. Yes, you will. That evening, I stood at the kitchen window washing dishes. Through the glass, I could see the fence in the moonlight, fresh white paint glowing faintly. I remembered something my father told me one summer, years ago, sitting under the big oak tree in his backyard. Jack, he'd said, when you grow up, make sure you have a fence. A property isn't really yours until you have a fence around it. And the most important thing about a fence, it's got a gate. And that gate is yours to open, not anyone else's. I didn't understand it then. I understood it now. The fence was fixed. The gate was mine. Nobody comes in without my permission. Nobody leaves with anything they didn't earn. From now on, it's my door, and I decide who walks through it. Some people say the end of a story is the last page. But I've learned that endings aren't places, they're decisions. I decided to stop being afraid of losing my mother. I decided to stop being ashamed of protecting my family. I decided to let the people who hurt me face the consequences of their choices. I decided that forgiveness was optional, but clarity was not. 7 years of silence had cost me more than I'd ever be able to measure. But the silence was over now. The next time my mother raised a hand, I wouldn't be there to see it, because I wouldn't be in her house. The next time Beth called me with a problem she'd created herself, I'd listen, but I wouldn't fix it for her. The next time anyone asked me what I wanted, I'd tell them the truth. I wanted my wife to feel safe. I wanted my daughter to know what boundaries looked like. I wanted to be someone worth looking up to. And now I am. It snowed again last night. Not a big storm, just a quiet dusting that covered the streets and the rooftops. When I woke up this morning, I stood at the kitchen window with my coffee and watched the sun rise over the white backyard. The new fence was perfect, bright white, straight as a ruler, gleaming in the morning light. Lily came down the stairs in her pajamas and pressed her face against the glass. Snow, she shouted. Snow, I agreed. Amy came down a moment later, still wrapped in her robe. She poured herself a cup of coffee and stood beside me. You're staring at the fence again, she said. I'm staring at what I built. She bumped her shoulder against mine. Are you going to be like that all year? I might. She laughed. Lily was already at the back door, yanking on her boots. Dad, let me go outside. I opened the door for her. The cold air rushed in. She ran out into the snow, her boots sinking deep, her laugh echoing off the new fence. Amy stayed beside me. We stood in the doorway together, watching our daughter make footprints across the white lawn. And I thought, this is what it feels like. This is what it feels like to be home. I stood in the doorway a little longer than I needed to. The coffee was getting cold in my hand, but I didn't want to move. Lily was making snow angels in the backyard, her pink boots kicking up flurries of white. Her laughter carried through the crisp morning air like a bell. Amy leaned into me, her shoulder warm against my arm. You know what I was thinking about, she said. The first time we saw this house. Before we bought it. I remembered. It had been a mess, peeling paint, a cracked driveway, weeds growing through the patio stones. But Amy had walked through the back door, seen the yard, and said, this could be perfect. A good fence, a tree for a swing, enough room for a dog someday. At the time, I'd thought she was crazy. The place needed work. The fence was already leaning back then. But she was right. The fence got fixed. The tree got a swing. And the dog, we got her last spring, a rescue mutt named Penny who was currently standing at the back door, her tail wagging a hole in the screen, watching Lily with absolute devotion. Everything we said we'd do, I said. We did it. Took us long enough. Took me long enough. She didn't argue with that. She just squeezed my arm. Lily came running back toward the house, snow clinging to her hat and mittens. Penny was wriggling with excitement, her whole body shaking. I pushed the screen door open and let the dog out. Lily shrieked with joy as Penny barreled into her, knocking her backwards into the snow. Dad, she tackled me. That's what dogs do, sweetheart. It's the best day ever. Amy and I watched them roll around in the snow for a few minutes. Then I turned and went back inside to pour myself a fresh cup of coffee. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. Amy had put something in the oven before I even woke up. The house was warm. The house was ours. Every room, every wall, every creaky floorboard. I'd spent so many years pouring my money and energy into a house I didn't even live in, keeping my mother's roof over her head, paying for her repairs, her trips, her new roof, her new furnace. I'd done it without thinking, because that's what sons did. That's what I'd been taught. But this house, this was different. This was the house I'd built with Amy. Every nail, every paintbrush stroke, every late night fixing a leaky faucet or a jammed garbage disposal. It was ours. Not my mother's. Not my father's. Not some obligation I'd inherited. Ours. I could hear Amy singing along to the radio in the living room. One of those old Christmas carols that she never got tired of, even in January. Lily was yelling something at Penny. The dog was barking in response, and the whole cacophony of it rolled through the house like a symphony. I leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping my coffee, and let myself feel it. For years, I'd been so focused on the bad stuff that I'd forgotten to notice the good. The weight I'd been carrying, the guilt, the obligation, the fear that I was somehow a bad son if I didn't make my mother happy. It was still there somewhere, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like something I'd put down a long time ago and just hadn't noticed until now. The phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at it. Text from Aunt Susan. Your mom wants to know if you're coming for Easter. She said she'll make that pie you like. No pressure. Just asking. I smiled. No pressure. That was Susan's way of saying Catherine had been stressing about it for days, but was too proud to call herself. I typed back, "Will come. Amy's bringing deviled eggs." The response came almost immediately. She's thrilled. Don't tell her I told you. I put the phone down. Lily burst through the back door, covered in snow, Penny at her heels. Daddy, can we have hot chocolate? Go change your clothes first. You're dripping on the floor. She looked down at the puddle forming at her feet. Oops. She ran off, leaving a trail of melted snow and muddy footprints. Amy came into the kitchen, her hair slightly damp from the humidity. Lily's going to stain the carpet. We'll clean it. What was that about Easter? Susan texted. Mom wants us to come. Did you say yes? Yeah. She nodded. Good. I'll make deviled eggs. She said it so casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. A year ago, the word Easter would have filled her with dread. A month of preparation. A week of anxiety. A morning of holding her breath until the meal was over. Now, she was already planning what she'd bring. Hey, Amy. She turned. Thank you. For what? For everything. For staying. For giving me time to get it right. She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. You're being sappy again. I'm being honest. She came over and kissed me on the cheek. You're being sappy. But it's fine. I love you anyway. I love you too. Now go help Lily with her boots. She's going to get snow all over the bedroom. I set down my coffee and went upstairs. Lily was sitting on the floor, tangled in her wet jacket, Penny trying to pull her socks off. The mess was spectacular. The noise was deafening, and I couldn't stop smiling. Jack, he'd said, when you grow up, make sure you have a fence. A property isn't really yours until you have a fence around it. And the most important thing about a fence, it's got a gate. And that gate is yours to open, not anyone else's. I didn't understand it then. I understood it now. The fence was fixed. The gate was mine. Nobody comes in without my permission. Nobody leaves with anything they didn't earn. From now on, it's my door, and I decide who walks through it. Some people say the end of a story is the last page. But I've learned that endings aren't places, they're decisions. I decided to stop being afraid of losing my mother. I decided to stop being ashamed of protecting my family. I decided to let the people who hurt me face the consequences of their choices. I decided that forgiveness was optional, but clarity was not. 7 years of silence had cost me more than I'd ever be able to measure. But the silence was over now. The next time my mother raised a hand, I wouldn't be there to see it, because I wouldn't be in her house. The next time Beth called me with a problem she'd created herself, I'd listen, but I wouldn't fix it for her. The next time anyone asked me what I wanted, I'd tell them the truth. I wanted my wife to feel safe. I wanted my daughter to know what boundaries looked like. I wanted to be someone worth looking up to. And now I am. It snowed again last night. Not a big storm, just a quiet dusting that covered the streets and the rooftops. When I woke up this morning, I stood at the kitchen window with my coffee and watched the sun rise over the white backyard. The new fence was perfect, bright white, straight as a ruler, gleaming in the morning light. Lily came down the stairs in her pajamas and pressed her face against the glass. "Snow," she shouted. "Snow," I agreed. Amy came down a moment later, still wrapped in her robe. She poured herself a cup of coffee and stood beside me. "You're staring at the fence again," she said. "I'm staring at what I built." She bumped her shoulder against mine. "Are you going to be like that all year?" "I might." She laughed. Lily was already at the back door, yanking on her boots. "Dad, let me go outside." I opened the door for her. The cold air rushed in. She ran out into the snow, her boots sinking deep, her laugh echoing off the new fence. Amy stayed beside me. We stood in the doorway together, watching our daughter make footprints across the white lawn. And I thought, this is what it feels like. This is what it feels like to be home.